Welcome to the Township Committee meeting of May 12, 2022. Adequate and electronic notice of the May 12, 2022 Township Committee meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act and by posting the notice and the agenda of the meeting on the bulletin board of the municipal building located at 1000 Route 10 in Whippany, and by posting notice of the Township's website, hanovertownship.com, by emailing the notice and agenda to the following newspapers: Morris County's Daily Record, the Star Ledger, the Hanover Eagle, and by filing the same with the Township Clerk. Ms. DeGiorgio, please take a roll call.
We may take a moment. John, we may take a moment. Ms. Mapp, I'll just step out for a second.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, we have a beautiful spring night to have the windows open, so it's a good thing.
We could have had the meeting outside.
Yeah, we could have done that. Would have been good.
Okay. This is new? Okay. Any specific trails? Not phase 3 being that one. Oh, you have more?
Committeeman Cahill.
Here.
Committeeman Francioli.
Here.
Committeeman Gallagher is excused this evening. Committeeman Mahalko.
Here.
And Mayor Farah
Here.
Four members in attendance.
Okay, thank you so much. Please rise and remain standing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Committeeman Mahalko will now lead us in a prayer.
Almighty God, we ask that you bless this governing body with an abundance of wisdom and understanding, so that every deliberation will result in actions which will promote the common good and the general welfare of all the people of Hanover Township. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right, the next order of business.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Our first order of business is the approval of the regular meeting minutes of April 14th, 2022. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next on the agenda, we have the public hearing and adoption of ordinances 12-2022, 13-2022, 14-2022, 15-2022, and 16-2022. Proof of publication that all 5 ordinances and the notice of introduction appeared in full in the April 20th issue of the Daily Record in accordance with law. At this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to convene the public hearing on these ordinances, numbers 12, 13, 14, and 15 only. We will have a separate public hearing for ordinance 16, which is the Monarch H2O Ridgedale Avenue ordinance. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Is there anyone in chambers wishing to be heard concerning any of these ordinances? Please, if so, state your name and address for the record and which ordinance you would like to speak regarding. 12, 13, 14, and 15.
The Monarch application ordinance is ordinance number 16. That will be heard after we complete discussions on ordinance number 12, 13, 14, and 15.
Motion to close.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, may I have a motion on adoption of ordinances 12, 13, 14, and 15 as a consent agenda?
Motion?
Second?
Roll call, Committeeman Cahill.
Aye.
Committeeman Francioli.
Aye.
Committeeman Mahalko.
Yes.
Mayor Faramasca.
Aye.
So adopted. Okay, now on adoption for ordinance 16-2022. I'd like to state for the record that this ordinance, 16-2022, is a land use ordinance, and this ordinance was sent to the planning board for referral and review, as well as being filed with the Morris County Planning and Development Office as required by the municipal land use law. And also in addition, the law also required the township to submit the ordinance to 5 contiguous municipalities and also to the residents within 200 feet of this proposed regulations. May I please have a motion to convene the public hearing on ordinance number 16?
Make the motion. Second?
Is there anyone in chambers wishing to be heard concerning ordinance 16? If so, please state your name and your address for the record.
Magello Fellow, 20 Ridgedale Avenue, Stephen Mills.
You're good. No, Magellan, stand while you speak because we can't hear
So,
you.
not everybody's there. Right, so I came just, I had asked questions before at the wrong time, but one was in changing the zoning, the purpose of it for the assisted living, would that definitely, if it fell through, with multi-housing units, then be put in or, totally moved in its place? That's a concern. And then I also stated when I, went to a planning meeting, and it was hard because it was Zoom, that I had mentioned other concerns if having family members go through this process, memory care, and going in and out of visiting, ambulances were always coming and going, and my fear was, is there enough ambulances in town for everyone? And I had asked that question, and the reply to me was, at the end, I was the lady who wanted to see old people die. That's horrible. That's not why I asked that question. If we don't only have one ambulance in town that's constantly running, there's a big community for one area to take it over. So my concerns were the ambulance, if it would stay at assisted living. And then also how tall it is going to be, that facility, with that structure being with that adequate parking. Being on the next side street, I know twice a year the restaurant will close, it's not a big deal, but with an everyday thing, all the parking and everything on the street. So those are all my concerns.
So the questions are related to the use. In the event the township committee were to approve this, and it went to a planning board application, and it was approved, what assurances do we have that that actually will take place? Second question is in regarding the ambulance issue and related to the nature of the operation of the ambulance, as well as the capability within the community to support an impact of this. So that question has like 3 questions in it. So I'm going to have to address your first question, again, to Mr. Samrau to speak about, in the event this use were approved by the Township Committee, and it went to planning, and it were then approved, what assurance do we have that that use actually will take place? Or the reverse of the question is, what assurances do we have that something else would not take place, such as multifamily housing?
Yeah, it won't occur if this zoning is adopted. This zoning doesn't permit any different use except for this assisted living type of facility. So the only options that I would say exist are either the property owner can proceed with an assisted living type of facility with all the limitations and restrictions that are in the ordinance, or they can continue to operate as a restaurant or another restaurant on the site or similar type of business. I think anything else, they'd have to go through this process for rezoning. I don't see anything else, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Branchow, I'm going to ask you to address the Monarch Development proposal as to what it is. Please talk to us about the number of units. Please talk to us about the number of apartments, assisted living units, memory care units, so that we have an understanding as to the nature of it.
Okay. What the developer who requested this rezoning has proposed is a combination of 3 types of housing. The three types of housing are congregate apartments. And congregate apartments are where unrelated people live together in an apartment unit. They have their own bedroom. By the way,
Please, can you take your mask off?
I was going to say, we can, or tilt the microphone up, maybe that would help. Yeah.
all of the units are age restricted.
There we are.
I need to make that clear. But a congregate apartment is a unit where unrelated individuals, each with their own bedroom, are sharing an apartment. So the kitchen and so forth, they share, they have their own bedroom. Assisted living, I think we're all familiar with what assisted living is. And then memory care is, for like dementia and that sort of thing. So it's sort of a spectrum of assistance that's provided, or services or amenities that are provided based upon the needs of the senior citizen living in that thing. So the ordinance would allow, and what was proposed was 160 units, which is 84 congregate apartments, 50 assisted living units, and 26 memory care units. How many stories do you mean? I think
It's
it's...
the height. There
What was
a
the height?
question-
What's the
there was a
height?
question related to the height of the building.
It's 3 stories. The maximum height under the ordinance would be 40 feet.
How does that-
Originally, it had been proposed at 60 feet.
So original proposal was 60 feet. The max, if this ordinance were approved, is 40 feet. How does that compare to the adjoining property, Sterling?
The Sterling units, I'm not talking about the senior facility on Boulevard. I'm talking about the units that face Ridgedale Avenue. Those are 34 feet high. So it's slightly higher than the regular units facing Ridgedale. The senior facility is higher, so it's probably comparable, maybe even a little lower than the senior building facing Boulevard.
What's the comparative in terms of what we call the front yard setback, the distance that building is to Ridgedale Avenue versus Sterling, so we get an understanding of that?
All right, the proposal before the board and what the ordinance requires would have a front setback of over 100 feet from the street right-of-way of Ridgedale Avenue. When I say the street right-of-way, that's not the curb. It's roughly 10 feet behind the curb. So from the curb, means it would be more than 100 feet. It would be 110 to 120 feet from that curb.
And currently, what is it at now?
The what?
What's the current building at now?
The restaurant building? I don't have
I
that.
think it was like 50 or...
It's less than 50. It's probably in the
Yeah.
range of...
Just to give you a perspective of
30
it. That was one thing that we were very concerned about,
30
too.
to 40 feet.
The height and the distance.
Yeah. By comparison, the Sterling Park buildings, there are 2 that face Ridgedale Avenue.
Yeah.
One of them is 81 feet from that same right-of-way line. One is 160 feet from that right-of-way line. So one's further, one's closer. But that gives you an idea for comparison. The senior building is less than either that 80 or 160 from Boulevard, but I'm just talking about facing Ridgedale Avenue.
Yeah. Again, to get that setback, that even though it is a couple feet higher than normal, 36 is usually kind of the limit. You get it further back, it's less of an impact. So we're trying to work with them.
Yeah, there's also no buffer requirement on the Sterling Park property.
Yeah.
So you have a wide, open, clear view of that as opposed to what would be
there's a nice-
required by this.
Initially, the buffer, although that we address in site plan,
Yes, it's also required in the ordinance.
but it's going to be required.
Blaise, do you have any visuals that you can share with us?
I do.
Because I think visuals might really help the residents get a better understanding as to some of these issues. Because one of the questions I'd like to have you also answer about the ambulance issue as well, in terms of specifically the location of that on the property.
Well, I think, too, Fred, didn't they say that they were going to provide their own ambulance?
Yes, they're required, and this will come up at the planning board hearing, they will be required to have their own ambulance services for, transporting, things of that nature. Now, an emergency
Not emergency,
would be a
but-
little different,
Yeah.
but still, yes, everything else. There is supposed to be, in this zone, I believe Mr. Branchow has a place or a location for an ambulance on site to be parked.
Yeah. And then one of the other things that we requested was the ambulance entrance is facing the north. So when he brings it up, I believe it's still on the plans, correct? That
Yeah, the cemetery side.
So it's the cemetery side. So you're not going to have an ambulance right there on Ridgedale Avenue. Now, obviously, in an emergency, they're going to get there as quick as they can. But if there was a non-emergency ambulance required, they're going to come to the side that's facing the cemetery. It's, and all those ideas, the things that you brought forward were concerns about us. If we rezone this, will it be, can it be turned into condos or whatever? And that's part of the motivation for doing this, is it's a good use. And again, they were agreeable to amending a good bit of the stuff that we've asked.
What I am showing on the screen right now is what was originally proposed.
Please speak into the mic.
Yes. What was originally proposed, I'm going to do a comparison of what was originally proposed and what the revised proposal is and what the ordinance would require. This was the original 60-foot proposal, the front elevation view, and then this is a perspective view looking from Ridgedale Avenue towards the front of the building. What's now proposed is this from Ridgedale Avenue, perspective view, the lower 40-foot high building, and this is the elevation view, not from Ridgedale Avenue, but from within the site. So this doesn't include the front buffer, whereas this drawing does show the planted area, which helps to hide the parking and as well as reduce the view of the building.
Where's the parking in that picture?
The parking is behind the vegetation here in this picture. There is also parking on the sides. But you can see in this picture, here's a driveway where the cursor is behind this car in Ridgedale Avenue, and you can see a few cars here at the opening for the driveway. So there's parking in the front and on both sides of the building.
So overall, the original height proposal was 60
60
feet.
feet.
Current is 40 in the zone, so that's a 33% reduction in the height.
Correct.
All right, any additional questions? Okay, please state your name and address.
Petition 24 Boulevard Road. My question is, the strip of land that the cemetery owns that comes out on Boulevard Road, is that a street going back and forth from Ridgedale to Boulevard? If so, it's going to put a lot of traffic on our street, and right now it's like a speedway.
There's no proposal to do anything with the cemetery property. This was more of an afterthought, because this is a PU zone, meaning public use. When the planning board was looking at this, because it's not just the 4 lots that would contain the assisted living facility that are being changed in zoning. There's actually 7 lots. 2 of them are owned by the cemetery. The only reason for that change is it's currently zoned for single-family housing, and it's never going to be single-family housing. So the board felt if we're going to make a change to PU zone, we may as well include the cemetery, which is more in keeping with the nature of the zone, PU, public use, or quasi-public uses, not single-family housing. So that's really the only reason that's included in this. There's no proposal to touch the cemetery.
Will there be an opportunity for us to speak with Monarch as far as my neighbor owns 2 of the properties behind the restaurant, we own a property, and our neighbor, so there's 4 properties. We'd be willing to sell the back end of our property if they were to buy it.
I mean, you can always obviously speak to them. If you mean at the public hearing on a site plan, you could, yes. there'll be an
The next-
opportunity for
The
that.
next step, if this goes forward, it would then go into an application process with the planning board. At the planning board meetings, that's an opportunity if you have individual property owner concerns, like the one that's just been raised, to address with that developer.
And we would be notified like we were notified of this.
You will be notified with
Anyone within 200 feet.
200 feet, if you're within, I didn't know where you were, 200 feet will get noticed.
No, you're not adjacent to this
No,
property.
there's a
You're separated by
cemetery
the
and
cemetery.
a small strip right
Yeah.
behind us, but I think that's part of, looks like it would be part of that.
All of the planning board information, the agendas are posted on the township website, they're readily accessible, so we encourage you to look at that.
Would the planning board meetings be in person, or would it be?
The planning board meetings are planned to be in person. The only reason why the planning board meeting would not be in person is because of an issue from a health standpoint that would prohibit us from doing that. But we plan to have those meetings live. Yes, we have a question.
Dining room 48 Stadium Court, how many parking spaces are we putting in front of this building? And to go back to the ambulance, only because I have a mother who's 93, mother who's 92 and a half. The ambulance come at night and they run their sirens and they have to take somebody who's in residence to the hospital. And it was a lot more frequent. I know when my mom was over here in Whippany at the facility that she had there. How are we going to do anything to take care of that?
Okay, let's break the question into two parts. The first question is the parking plan. This is really a site plan issue, but from a concept standpoint, how many parking spaces would be in the front of the building versus on the side of the building?
I'm going to, obviously, until we have a final plan, I can't say with certainty, but in the concept that we have seen, it's between 50 to 60 spaces in front of the building.
If there's an overflow?
Pardon?
If there's an overflow?
There's parking on the side, too.
Yeah, so the parking on a facility like this is designed for peak parking. So we think on a regular basis, there wouldn't be issues. Will there be peaks like Mother's Day and other holidays? Yes. Okay, the next question is the ambulance. I believe the attorney said that the ambulance system would be, they would support their own ambulance system. So the ambulance would be on location.
Right, they'll still run the sirens.
If the ambulance is on location,
If I'm taking, okay, so if my mother goes into cardiac arrest
yes,
and they don't have the necessary equipment, they're going to take her over to Morristown Medical Center.
yes.
They're going to keep on, because that is their norm. When our ambulances pick you up, if it's life-threatening, if you're bleeding, they turn on those sirens and they go.
Yes, so when they're leaving, when they would leave the facility,
Right.
if they needed to turn on the siren, just like right now, our ambulance system would be using a siren if necessary.
Right, but we just gave it 160 possibilities.
Yes, however, the 160 possibilities, again, we need to go back to the facts, and that's what we're trying to provide. There's 84 apartments. They could be 55 plus. I don't know their ages. There's 50 assisted living units. There's 26 memory care units. I don't know the distribution of what percentage of your population breaks in terms of needing an ambulance, but there's not 160 units that are what I would call at high risk based upon over 50% of them are Congregate Apartments, 55 plus, I don't know. Any other questions related to this ordinance? Please stand, state your name and address.
Fran Lowensteiner, 6 Jacob Arnold Road, Morristown. I'm a board member and an officer of Bedfordville Cemetery.
Yes.
We beseech this group to not change the zoning of the cemetery. It has been in existence for 125 years. And we just really don't want, I mean, it's not what happens there, but we don't want to sell any of our property. We don't want any of that kind of encumbrance from anyone or the neighbor.
Blaze, the question is the integrity of the cemetery. The cemetery is 125 years old. It's been in our community for a very long time. We're very happy that it's here. Will any change in this ordinance invite any changes to their ability to control the property which they own?
And if they've got overflow parking, we know that once a year we have a memorial service. We use parking diagonally across the street in one of the office parks. We don't want any of their parking in our property because we have no idea when we will have a funeral and unveiling or anything. And it could happen on Mother's Day, Father's Day, any of those holidays, and it just can't happen.
With all due respect, that is a flat-out site plan question. And that can be asked of that applicant, Monarch, at that point, and it should be asked, what are you going to do to preserve the integrity of our parking? Because our parking is not to be used for outside of that memorial park. So that is something that belongs to the site plan.
But to answer the
earlier question, please answer that about the PU zone.
The only change to the cemetery that would happen if this ordinance were adopted is that it would now become a permitted use. Right now, the cemetery is not a permitted use in the R40N zone that it's in. It's what's called a non-conforming use. It's grandfathered, it predates, and there's also state law for cemeteries that I'm sure you're aware of that basically say we can't stop it. But now this would become a permitted use. So if the cemetery wanted to change anything, it would be allowed to as a permitted use. But nothing would be forced to, the cemetery would not be forced to do anything. It would continue as it has done for many years, and nothing would happen. As to the parking, there are parking standards in the ordinance. The state of New Jersey establishes parking standards for these uses, and the ordinance has incorporated those as well. So the idea is that there shouldn't be overflow parking if you put it up on the site, and that's what the code is
So
requiring.
from a planning standpoint, if I'm hearing this correctly, is there's actually a benefit to the cemetery if it's changed this distinction to a PU zone,
Correct.
so that in the event you wanted to do something at the cemetery, you would have the ability to do it, as opposed to being a non-conforming use, which then you would have to give a presentation and open up every aspect of the cemetery operation in that planning board case. So it actually would be beneficial, the PU designation.
Mayor, if I could add, I think that was one of the discussions the committee had publicly. While we were here looking at this zone, it was suggested to include in the zone the cemetery because it existed there to make it consistent with the use now. So while we were looking at the zone, I think that's the way it happened. It wasn't intended to change anything, like you said.
Any other questions, please?
I apologize, this sounds stupid, but how many spots did you say they were going to have for parking in the front?
About 50 to 60.
How many assisted living units?
It's just 50.
Okay, so every assisted living has a car, and you have the employees, and now you have the visitors. I just see what happens, Samuel Court, we've gotten hammered every time H2O ran out of space, but they've worked out their own arrangement. Again, with the cemetery, they park, we don't care, it's not frequent, and they're never disrespectful. They don't park and block people's driveways, they don't block so you can't get out. My math says you're maxed out just from your assisted living people if you have a driver in the family and a car. And then you have your workers. As well as now you have people coming to visit all of those folks.
But Lee, what formula did you use for ultimate parking?
That's
Keep in
just the
mind,
front.
50 to 60 is just what's in front of the building. It
Yeah, there's
doesn't
the
count
upper-
what's on the two sides. All right, so the formula that we use is the formula that the state of New Jersey requires us to use.
Another question on the front yard, I know the audience might have some more comment. The front yard encroachment, the parking, right? What is left from parking encroachment to the street as far as
The
setback?
parking cannot be any closer than 40 feet to the right-of-way. Again, that's not the curb, that's the imaginary line behind the sidewalk, which is roughly 10 feet behind. So roughly 50 feet or more from the curb.
All right, understanding that, and again, going back to what the mayor had commented, this has to go to site plan, and it'll go through scrutiny like you're talking about now. That brings in landscaping. So the front yard has ample area for landscape treatment, so we'll probably take a look at that. Not probably, you will take a look at that as well.
Yeah.
So for screening and other types of uses, so.
Yeah.
Thank you for this.
I think this gentleman has a question.
My name is Ron Axelrod. I'm president of the Board of Trustees of the cemetery. I have a question, just a follow-up question, and that is with the change in the zoning, as you said, it allows us to do more, quote unquote, if we needed to. A couple of the neighbors that front on Malapartis have approached us about purchasing their backyards. If we do go through with that, how will this change in ordinance affect that?
Yeah, Mr. Axelrod, I think now we're getting off of the ordinance, but we're happy to address that question. And the way to address that question is to call our business administrator, who will set up an appointment for you with Mr. Branchow to address that very specific question that you're asking.
Okay.
Any other questions pertaining to, yes, please.
Yes, hi, Terry Beard, 18250 Road, Northeast section of Hanover. Having attended, I believe, every single planning board meeting, I remember Monarch making the presentation, and that they were not providing the adequate parking, or they were under parking, or it was, I guess through the, whatever the parking regulations, things that they have, the state that they follow, but it was going to be less parking, but they didn't feel as though that would be an issue. Is that true?
The latest concept that I have, and again, I'm only speaking to the ordinance, if an applicant seeks a variance or an approval for fewer than required, they have to make a case and demonstrate it. The latest concept that I saw showed 8 spaces that would be required that they're not proposing to build, but they're proposing what we call to bank, meaning they're reserving them for no other use but potential future parking use if needed. So if parking were a problem, and we said to them, you're going to have to build this additional parking, those 8 spaces that their concept showed not to be built, then we'd have the right to make them build them. If they can show that they don't need them, we would consider having green space instead of pavement to be an improvement if they don't need it. But if they do need it, we have the right to make them build it. So.
Okay, so they're going to be banking those spaces.
8
They're not
spaces.
going to actually be providing all the spaces that the parking regulations do. They're going to be banking it. If there's a problem later on, then
they'd have
complain, and then the town would force them
to build them.
to build those extra spaces.
And again, I'm going by concept, that,
Right.
this isn't a site plan
And
yet.
I'm going back by memory of
Yeah.
attending,
Now,
planning board
this is a very good question, and again, it's getting technical, so I'm going to try to simplify it.
I'm just trying to help them
Right.
answer questions from experience that I have attended the meetings, and that it can very well be answered when the people are sitting here. Because I do have another question in reference to the R40 zoning.
Before we proceed on to the next question, so again, it's a very good question that just came up about parking. So there is a plan That's the physical parking plan. So their physical parking plan may be that they're building 110 parking units, or 100, or 90. There's an ultimate parking plan requirement if the board is to approve this. And the ultimate parking plan might be that it's 120. So you could physically say you're going to build 100, but ultimately, there's a requirement if we have a problem and go back to them and say, hey, look, you can't park your cars with 100. You're parking in other places. You got to go back and you got to build those additional parking spaces. So that's the point that Terry's bringing up, and it's a serious issue that planning will deal with. Next question.
The other question is in relation to the cemetery being currently, I believe, probably an R40 zone.
R40N.
R40N. If they were to go to public use, then they are going to have to go to the Board of Adjustment then in order to sell property. If they were going to an R40 zone to sell to somebody, privately, if they were going to sell the property to their, to increase the size of these backyards or whatever that's bordering that, would they have a problem selling that because they are now designated as a public use?
I'll say what I said before, that cemetery is not a permitted use in the R40N. So if any properties that are currently zoned R40N were to be converted to cemetery use, that would not be permitted without a variance, or a rezoning to change that also to PU. I can't comment on the residential aspect. So for example, if the subdivision were to reduce the lot size of the home property to less than the minimum, that could also require variance. But again, I don't have information to be able
They would
to.
probably be increasing their lot size, taking away from the cemetery.
No, I heard the cemetery was going to take away from the homes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions related to this ordinance? Yes, please, name and address.
Back here, 16 Richmond. Will we go to hear the ordinance? Because I'm concerned about other things that could be besides the existing.
In terms of the ordinance itself,
Well, how about the implication of the ordinance itself? Am I right to understand that there could be government buildings under public use, et cetera, et cetera?
please, can you help address this question?
Yes, the public use zone allows public uses. I will note, though, however, that the residential zone, the PU public use zone does allow public uses, like schools, like libraries, things like that, churches. But the R40N, which it currently is zoned, also allows public uses, schools, and churches as well. So in that sense, there's not really a change in the uses that would be permitted if they were to go public instead of this assisted living thing. They would be permitted even without the change. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Any other questions related to this ordinance?
Petition again, Boulevard Road. You mentioned about some of the housing would be, is it, maybe I'm misunderstanding, is it like a group home effect? I mean, if there's multiple people, like an apartment with several bedrooms, is that like, say, like the Arc around the corner from us?
I think it's more like a modern-day dormitory, where dormitories, a lot of them, 4 students, share that apartment, which has a common dining area. They might have separate...
So it's not like specific for like art or handicap, it's
No.
anybody.
Not to my knowledge. And by the way, most of these congregate apartments are 1 or 2 bedrooms. We're not talking about, large, type number of bedrooms.
All right, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, may I get a motion to close this portion? of the
Motion to
meeting?
close.
Second.
Any commentary from the Township Committee? Okay, all right.
May I have a motion to adopt ordinance 16?
Motion to adopt.
May I have a second?
Second.
On roll call, Committeeman Cahill.
Yes.
Committeeman Francioli.
Aye.
Committeeman Mahalko.
Yes.
Mayor Farah.
Aye.
So adopted. I would also like to state for the record that the planning board's letter sent in response to the referral of ordinance 16 dated May 11 stated that the ordinance is inconsistent with the master plan. So the law requires when adopting an ordinance that is not consistent with the master plan that it states its reason in the resolution. I'd like to read into the record the title of resolution number 83-2022, which outlines the reasons for us adopting ordinance 16. A resolution of the Township Committee for the Township of Hanover stating its reasons for the adoption of ordinance 16-2022, which is inconsistent with the land use and housing element of the master plan. May I have a motion to pass resolution 83-2022?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
On roll call, Committeeman Cahill.
Yes.
Committeeman Francioli.
Aye.
Committeeman Mahalko.
Yes.
Mayor Farah.
Aye.
So approved.
Okay, this ordinance has been approved to move forward. The next step in the process, if the applicant does so to pursue this, would be to formalize a planning board application. During that formal planning board application process, that is the opportunity to ask that applicant very specific questions that many of you asked tonight, which are very good ones, pertaining to parking issues, pertaining to buffer issues, pertaining to their potential interest in acquiring additional property, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have 3 ordinances for introduction. I'd like to read each title into the record. Ordinance number 17-2022, an ordinance of the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover, amending and supplementing section 13 and 14 of ordinance number 15-2021 by adjusting the salary ranges and rates of the pay for the temporary, seasonal, and summer employees of the Department of Rec and Park Administration, Public Works, Building and Grounds, and Park Maintenance and Administration. Ordinance number 18-2022, an ordinance of the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover, authorizing the execution of a lease agreement with the Hanover Township Boy Scouts of America, Incorporated, Boy Scouts Troop 155, and operating the B Meadow Park Brickyard Concession Stand on July 11th, 18th, 25th, 2022, during the Township's live vocal concerts. Ordinance number 19-2022. An ordinance of the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing the Township Engineer to retain the services of Michael Hanrahan, AIA, and the firm of Clark Catton Heights, licensed architect, for the purpose of preparing concept plans for the possible improvement/expansion of the police headquarters and the Violations Bureau, and further appropriating the sum of $30,000 from the 2022 Capital Improvement Fund account and retaining the services of the architectural firm. I'd like to state for the record that all 3 ordinances and their notices of introduction will be published in full in the Daily Record in accordance with the law. Public hearing is scheduled for June 9, 2022 at 7 p.m. If any member of the public would like to speak regarding these ordinances, they will be given the opportunity to do so. May I have a motion to introduce all 3 ordinances as a consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
On roll call, Committeeman Cahill.
Aye.
Committeeman Francioli.
Aye.
Committeeman Mahalko.
Yes.
Mayor Farah.
Aye.
So introduced. Next order of business is the approval of resolutions as a consent agenda. Resolution numbers 84-2022 through 99-2022. Any member of the Township Committee have any question regarding any of these resolutions?
Nope.
May I have a motion to approve them?
Make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next on the agenda, payment of bills in the amount of $583.23. May I have a motion to pay the bills?
I'll move to pay the bills.
You always pay the bills. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And lastly, we have one raffle application, Knights of Columbus Bingo Raffle, RL 3355. Motion to approve.
Make the motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, Mayor, that clears my agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Giorgio. Good job as always.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, if there's a member of the public who would like to address the Township Committee, I'd like to get a motion to open the meeting to the public.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Terry, thanks for staying with us.
The lone wolf.
I did use my order this morning. That was
Terry Beard, 180 Parsippany Road, in Hanover.
I actually, very good, quoted his elbow. I have actually two questions. The first question is, when you have a board member or a committee member here that's appointed and you're sitting on a board or a committee, is there a code of conduct for those boards or committee members? And is it something that they actually sign? That they will, have some kind of a code of conduct?
I think this is a very good question. I'm not sure. We're going to have to research this, a professional code of conduct.
And when you become a board member, do you sign?
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I don't think so.
I know we did for the Board of Ed, but I don't recall, at least for this committee, I don't recall that we signed anything. It's been a while.
Sign another committee, like the
Yeah,
planning board or?
within the oath of office.
Yeah, we did take an oath.
This is part of the oath of office. So if you're a board member, you have an oath of office responsibility, but that's where this information would be, and I think we can get you a copy of an oath of office for you to look at.
And Mayor, and for the Board of Adjustment and Planning Board, there's statutory type of appointments, so all the ethics rules apply, conflict of interest, all of that applies as appointed officials, so those rules all apply.
Okay, all right, thank you very much for that. And could you please explain your resolution number 99? It's rather androgynous, because actually the 6017, when I look at the county's tax thing, it doesn't come up. But I'm going to assume it's the 24 track, because lots 65 are in that direction.
Right, can I
It
answer
is,
that question
yeah.
for you?
Okay. That is because, as a result of the Route 24 right-of-way acquisition, and what we've done is we're giving the county the right to utilize the property for trails purposes. That section, there's an actual legal description attached to that, Terry, for a section of the property, and Jerry could add to
Be a
it.
little bit more specific on that. That's only along East Hanover Avenue. The county has a plan to provide a multimodal path along Hanover Avenue. So they, as properties that they love, for example, the Lowe's and the ShopRite, they've always required an additional, it ranges from 5 to 8 feet, so that they have a little bit more width to be able to put a multimodal path in there. So, being that the Route 24 property is now the township's property, we conveyed them that same right.
Okay, so, and that would be, once the resolution gets published, they'll be able to see that? Because when you're doing resolutions, you don't get to see them before you do it here. I can only see them after the fact.
Well, we have an actual agreement and a legal description attached to that, so sure, you can
Once it
certainly...
gets published.
Sure, oh, yeah. I don't know if it'll be actually published, because it was a resolution,
The
but
resolution will be on our website.
But it'd be
Yeah,
available.
as soon as we upload it to the
Yeah.
website. So
Yeah,
after Monday
Yeah.
morning, it'll be up there.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other member of the public who would like to address the Township Committee at this time? Please do so by stating your name and address. Seeing none, hearing none, I'll get a motion to close this portion of our meeting.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any other business that the Township Committee would like to communicate at this time?
I always have stuff to talk about.
Mr. Mahalka.
I always have stuff to talk about. And it's important that this stuff gets out, too. First of all, Memorial Day Parade is on Memorial Day Monday, which is May 30th. Hopefully, everyone can come out and attend, support our veterans. Please come out. Step-off is at 9:30. It's going to follow the usual parade route, which is going from Whippany Park High School to the American Legion, followed by some refreshments afterwards, ceremony and some refreshments. So again, that's Memorial Day Monday. Step-off is at 9:30. A couple other things that are going on. Substance awareness. They've been very busy lately. They have a presentation going on next week on May 18th, 7 o'clock, Whippany Park High School. It's called Hidden in Plain Sight. And it mocks a teen's bedroom. I'm sorry. It's a mock-up of a teen bedroom and the different areas of substances that could be hidden and paraphernalia. Points out to us older generations that aren't aware of what, there's a lot of new stuff out there, and it kind of gives parents an insight into that. So that's going on next week. Also, cultural arts. They have a free art lecture going on May 22nd here from 3 to 4:30. It's Frida Kahlo. She's a Mexican artist. They're going to be discussing her. Also from cultural arts, they are in need of volunteers. If anyone is interested, reach out to myself or Ed Abaloo. Never pronounced that correctly. Reach out to one of us or check in with the administrator, and they will point you in the right direction. They do a lot of good stuff, but we're kind of shy on members lately, and we'd love to have some people, some new faces coming out. Finally, just sum it up, recreation. Again, we're always busy in recreation. Pool memberships are going very well. It's higher than in the past, so we're looking for another good pool year. If you have not registered, now's the time. We still have plenty of openings. There was just a slight increase over last year's rates, so again, sign up for the pool. Always good stuff going on over there. Our summer programs have opened up also. Swim team, Summer Plus, traveling team, Wildcat camps, those are all open. The sign-ups are going on now, so register the children. And then finally, we had a meeting the other day about the turf field that's going to be going over at the Brickyard. We're moving ahead with that. Not as quick as I'd like, of course, but hopefully we should have shovel and ground, what, fall?
Yeah, that's the target, is to have contracts awarded and begin construction in the fall after the football season, which I guess it's late fall. The football season ends, I believe, November 15th, so right after that, we have all our permits in place, contracts awarded, and begin that construction.
Yeah, so hope that's moving along.
Thank you, Committeeman Malco, and thank you for your leadership in bringing back the Memorial Day Parade to our town.
My pleasure, and I got a great committee that I'm working with, and also if anybody's interested in volunteering to help out day of Memorial Day, we need some helpers Memorial Day, with some directing and assignments and that type of stuff. So reach out to me, mmahalco@hanovertownship.com, or pretty much you guys know how to get in touch with me. Get in touch with me. We need some helpers. We can use some help. So thanks for that plug.
Everything on our end here, Board of Health, by the way, as I explained to the committee earlier, we're losing Dr. Zaborowski, who is the chair of the Board of Health. He will be retiring the chair, and so we are actively looking for new members to the Board of Health, in particular a member who might have a medical degree, et cetera, who could add on to the staff there. I want to say, once again, on recreation, and Mike covered it very well, they had a great fishing contest on the 30th. It went so well. And it was just a pleasure to see the young families out there on Malapart's Pond, and the youngsters for the first time throwing a line into the pond, and the look on their face when they pull these 4 to 6 inch sunnies out of the pond. So it was great. They threw them back in, and I hope next year we'll even expand on that. It was a great event. The farm is underway. The Stony Brook Farm and Garden is well underway with plantings now. It's doing so well. We're now looking to expand the programs at the farm, providing an educational program like in the form of a summer camp, for youngsters. We're working in conjunction with the Lebanon Library, who has individuals with teaching degrees who can bring to the farm a program for the kids, youngsters, to learn about planting, farming, and learn about gardening, etc. So we're very excited over that. It's all going well. So for now, everything else seems very quiet, and we're happy for that, and we're really happy that we're seeing the light through the tunnel of getting out of this COVID matter. We're still plagued by it. We know that on the Board of Health with Omicron, and it's a virus. Certainly for those who have had vaccinations, etc., nothing that would or should hospitalize you, so we don't want to create any panics here in our Hanover Township. But by the way, let me say overall through this, through these several years of COVID-19, Hanover Township has been tops in the county and in the state as far as the lowest amount of viruses and infections, so we're very proud of that as well. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor, that's it for me.
All right, Committeeman Cahill.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I need to start with a bit of sad news. Today, there was a funeral service that was held for retired Hanover Township Police Officer Laszlo Chengetto. Forgive me, I don't know the exact pronunciation of that name. He was a resident of Cedar Knolls, served with the Hanover Township Police Force for 25 years before retiring in 1997. He was also a volunteer at the Cedar Knolls Firehouse and First Aid Squad. He spent a lot of time actually driving the ambulances. So I'm sure I speak for everybody here in the dais. We offer our condolences for his family and his friends, but I understand it was a very nice ceremony with the support of family and friends, as well as a lot of our own Hanover Township Police Department. Keeping in line with the police, a couple of days ago, the Police Unity Tour started. That is a 4-day, 300-mile bike ride from Parsippany to Washington, D.C. We had 3 officers, well, I should say, the Unity Tour is about raising money and recognition for officers that have lost their lives in the line of duty. And they do this every year. They've been doing it every year since 1997, with the exception of course, our COVID years. Officers here in Hanover Township that participated were Officers Eric Kroc, Matt Gallagher, as well as Special Law Enforcement Officer John Bannon. So actually they should be in D.C. right now, hopefully enjoying a nice meal and a cool drink. But it's good for them for that. We just wrapped up the 2022 Distracted Driving Campaign. It began on April 1st. It was a 1-month program where through grant money provided by the state, extra patrols were out and about here around the town, looking for distracted drivers and other types of driving violations that might create a hazard for others. This month there were 192 total violations, as well as 2 arrests, in that 1-month period for distracted driving and a few other offenses. And then also just moving forward, coming up is the Memorial Day holiday as well as summer, and there is always increased activity for DWI interaction as well through various programs and funds as well, and Hanover Township will be a part of that as well. Just wanted to call out that it is also starting next week, May 15th. It's National EMS Week. Basically, this is just a week where we recognize the important work of all of our EMTs and EMS personnel and all that they do for us here in Hanover Township and in other communities as well. Lord knows they don't know what they're walking into a lot of the time, and especially over these past 2 years with COVID. So, take a moment to recognize all their hard work. Along with the fire departments, really quick on the consolidation efforts. I had mentioned that a couple of meetings ago. We continue to have monthly meetings as a work group. Just as a reminder to consider consolidation of Districts 2 and District 3. There are really 2, this is very high level, but 2 conditions. It won't negatively impact the taxpayers, and the level of service will either be equal to or improved once the consolidation ends. So we expect more news probably in the June, July timeframe, as putting something before the committee and that sort of thing. But I just wanted to point out that things are still moving along pretty well. And then Lastly, is coming up on June 11th is the Hanover Township Education Foundation Run for Health, their 5K. This is another event that was put off the past couple of years due to COVID. They're bringing it back. If you remember back the last time they did it, it's a great event. I mean, they've got prizes and trophies, and they actually had a band last time playing before the race. That, again, is on June 11th, 7 a.m. registration, 8:40 start time for the race. There is registration online as well. If you go to www.htef5k.org, you can sign up there as well. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill. Great initiatives, and yes, let's please remember our first responders next week as they celebrate their special week, and I believe Mr. Macera has something he wants to report on as well.
Yeah, just for the committee, notification of the committee, I've been approached by representatives of the River Park property. They would like to do some preliminary work on the main portion of their property on the north side of the river. Some grading work, they want to take advantage of the season, the work season, and start some preliminary work. As you know, there's a lot of activity on the site. Phase 1 is well underway. They've begun some work on the dam, although I understand there's some modifications to that. But they've demolished that old warehouse building that stood there for many years. So they want to start cleaning the property up and getting it ready for the next phase of development, which some of you are aware they have made application to the planning board. I will be meeting with their engineers to develop the scope and see exactly what they want to do, and we'll either issue it either through a grading permit or a limited site. But once I have more information, I'll bring that to the committee. But again, just notification that they want to advance some work on that property.
Well, thank you for keeping us apprised. I think it's consistent with, we have approached other applications, especially in terms of better long-term, and the use of the better months to do that kind of work would be good, and would keep us surprised as well as to the nature of the agreements. Okay?
I will, absolutely.
All right, under the banner of great things happen in Hanover Township, I'd also like to underscore for the Township Committee that great accomplishments have occurred this week in Hanover Township as well. Hanover Township is pleased to report that it has 2 new Eagle Scouts amongst its residents. These are our leaders today and our leaders in the future. And the recipients of the prestigious Eagle Awards are Mr. Joseph Cirillo and Mr. Kyle Blanchfield. So a large shout out to them and their families and their scout leaders who helped them along the way. Okay? All right. At this point, I'd like to, if there's no other business from the Township Committee, ask for a move to adjourn.
Just one comment, and shout out to Brandon Funeral Home. Today, they had a food truck out in their parking lot. They had it all set up with picnic tables, and invited all of our EMT, emergency peoples, police, fire, etc., over there for a wonderful picnic that they had there, and I passed by, it was doing really great. So we thank them for their community involvement. It's great.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay. A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Our business is completed for this evening.
Very good.
Thank you. Okay.